So Alex Poatan Pereira saves yet another UFC pay-per-view main event. And look, this guy's quickly becoming one of the most popular fighters in the entire sport. His rise is something that will be studied for years to come. It's really unprecedented what he's done. And he's up against a very tough opponent in Jiří Procházka, who in many ways is saving the card as well. You know, this was supposed to be Chandler versus McGregor. So both of these guys are stepping in on short notice. Now, we know Poatan was dealing with some toe injuries, and so there was kind of the pushback in the beginning why he was considering not accepting the fight. But in true Alex Pereira fashion, he decided that he's the man for the job. He's going to step up and do this thing. So I'm very excited for the fight. I want to get into the X's and O's and hear your thoughts because I want to predict the outcome. You know, we've already seen this fight once and we saw how it went, but both of these guys possess a ton of power. Both of these guys do get hit a little more often than you'd probably like if you're a fan of either one. So it could go either way again, and the odds do reflect that. You know, the odds have it minus 175 for Poatan and then plus 145 for Jiří. So not quite a pick'em fight. Alex is 1.5 to 1.75 to 1 favorite. So what are your thoughts, and ultimately, who are you taking?
Well, this International Fight Week is definitely not what we were expecting to get, but in all actuality, this card is awesome, and the main event is incredible. Look, we've seen these guys fight before, and of course, Alex Pereira was able to get his hand raised against yet another UFC champion or former champion, which at this point, I think he has more wins over UFC champions than non-champions, which again goes to your thing where he's going to be studied at some point because what his rise to the top of the UFC will likely never be created again. Somebody's going to have to do something very special to amass and even better what Alex Pereira has done. But Alex Pereira in this fight is very unique because he's already seen what Jiří Procházka does. And while Jiří Procházka is a very unorthodox, difficult guy to train for, it looked to me, if you go back and watch the fight, which I did the other day, the UFC always will release videos in old fights just to get the fights
get the juices flowing,
get everybody excited for what's to come. So I went back and watched that fight, and the first round was very competitive. Jiří was throwing some things at him that was catching Pereira off guard, but Pereira had a lot of pressure in that fight, and from the very first kick, he was feeling some pressure because Jiří Procházka hit the deck off the very first calf kick. And at that point, I was like, all right, we're going to see some adjustments out of Jiří. We might have to see some stance switching, which is exactly what he had to do a couple minutes into the first round, start switching stances more frequently because that front leg just couldn't take any more damage. And we saw Poatan, of course, in a little bit of danger because Jiří's such a heavy hitter and he throws so weird, but he was always so calm and calculated, even in the moments where Jiří was really trying to mount some offense and put some dangerous attacks on him. So I really did enjoy the first round, but it was very close. And I don't want to basically just write Jiří Procházka off because if you go back and watch the fight, you realize that he had a lot of great moments, and even though he probably didn't win the first round on the judges' scorecards, it was close. He could have gotten at least one judge to say he won that round. The second round was a little bit different, and that's when Alex Pereira was able to find his shot. But I do think that Jiří Procházka could become the world champion again. And when you fought somebody that you might have lost to him, you might have won to him regardless, at least you know the evil that you're facing. Because when you don't know, you really haven't, all you have is the face off. And you'll even hear some guys talk about it. Like, when I got in the face of my opponent, I touched him somehow. And it wasn't only for a publicity stunt. It wasn't for reels and Instagram and YouTube videos so they could get some sort of reaction and make people excited. It was also so I could feel him, see how hard his body is, see how in shape he is, get a feel for
take a look in his eyes.
Right, how dense he is, all of that stuff. But one step further is actually getting to fight that person. So now you know the worst they can possibly do and the best they can possibly do. And I think that's going to help both fighters a lot. I don't think this is going to end as quickly as the first one. I think we're going to get a longer fight, something in the 4 to 5 range. But because they're both so heavy, they're both so powerful and so sharp with their striking, I do see this being a finish. And you're usually the first one to give your prediction, but I'll go ahead and give mine. I've got Alex Pereira winning, doing another insane thing. I mean, what this guy's doing is like storybook, but the thing about stories is they keep getting better and better until a certain day comes. And I don't think the day where Alex Pereira falls off is coming anytime soon. I think he beats Jiří Procházka with another knockout victory, but I think it's going to be later in the fight. He's going to fight through some adversity, deal with some more strikes and some more offense from Jiří, but ultimately get the job done with a KO. Probably something similar to what he did last time.
Alex Pereira is becoming a mixed martial artist now at a rapid clip. And it's funny because when he first entered the UFC, he was really a kickboxer who was very skilled that was learning some MMA skills.
Right. I heard people saying, just take him to the ground.
Exactly. And then, you know, there were times where fighters got him to the ground and you did see that there was a little bit of an Achilles heel there.
Right. Not as bad as Robelli's Espinada, but as he showed a couple weeks ago.
That's right, yeah.
But you know, we saw there were some holes in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that another great striker at heavyweight who's ultra exciting. But this shows you that the skills that Alex possessed coming into the UFC compared to what his skill set is now is staggeringly different.
Yeah.
And it's evolving at a rapid clip.
Right.
You know, so I think that the best time to get Alex Pereira was 2 years ago.
Right.
The second best time might have been 6 months ago, but right now, Alex Pereira, under the tutelage of Glover Teixeira, getting in there, I mean, he's embracing the star that he's becoming.
Right.
He's walking with this air of confidence. You know, he's a guy that at one point in his life was down and out, and he had some issues with alcohol that he's been very candid about. And sometimes it takes a little while to, you know, manifest and build that confidence back to, you know, operate at the highest frequency.
Right.
He did that in kickboxing, and now he's come to MMA. And I think Alex Pereira believes that he is the best 205-pound fighter on planet Earth.
Right.
And I think he's acting and living and fighting like he's the best 205 fighter on planet Earth. So my prediction is right in line with yours. Alex Pereira by knockout again. Jiří Procházka, phenomenal fighter. Super exciting. I'll never miss a Jiří fight as long as I live. That spinning back elbow against Dominic Reyes, that was what really just won me over as him being one of my favorite light heavyweights to watch because he's so unorthodox. I mean, even just how he finished Glover Teixeira.
Right.
Unbelievable. It was almost like a rear naked choke modified, but he didn't have his hooks in. He wasn't even really on his back. It was just a pure will to win type of thing. So I'm not discounting Jiří. Like, Jiří can definitely win this fight, but I think Jiří is just too open and careless at times for a lights-out striker like Pereira. Pereira's only getting better, and when I say only better, that means his striking's getting better too, which is a scary thing because a lot of people think that, you know, you have a grappler like Islam, like, okay, Islam's striking's getting better, but his grappling is right here and it's going to stay here. No, Pereira's striking was right here coming into the UFC and his grappling was down here. Now his grappling might be up here, but his striking is no longer here. His striking is getting better.
And better for MMA.
Exactly. And learning the range of MMA, learning how to use the cage, learning how, you know, the distance works in an MMA fight compared to a kickboxing fight because it is a different, you know, thing.
Right.
And so I think that he's going to be able to find his shot on Jiří. Jiří comes in a little bit reckless sometimes, and it's worked for him. I mean, the guy's become the world champion. He's put on some of the best highlight reel knockouts at 205 in recent memory. But when you're fighting a guy like Alex Pereira, who has that touch of death with his left hook, who's got some incredible kicks, as you say, with the calf kicks, the low kicks, he can really put you on the ground and freeze your movement. I mean, it's just too much, I think, for Jiří to overcome, and I believe Alex Pereira will defend his belt. He's going to knock Jiří out again with his hands. It'll probably be a hook and then some beautiful shots that come afterwards as far as his selection of shots are concerned. I'm saying third or fourth round knockout, Alex Pereira.
Okay, yeah, so something similar to mine. Yeah, I think we're going to see more of this because when you saw the first fight, there wasn't really any feeling out. They immediately started striking with each other, and you know, Jiří Procházka has such a unique style. But one thing that really bothered him in that fight was the low kicks and the leg kicks, and he fights with his legs really wide at times, and almost in like a ultra bladed karate style stance. and that leaves your the back of your leg wide open, especially when you've got weight in it to be kicked. And Alex Pereira is really good with his timing. You can't find many checks on his kick because he just throws it, he just whips it up there, and it doesn't even look like it's going to have a whole lot of power.
No telegraph whatsoever.
Right, and then it sits his opponent down. So there's a lot of power behind those shots that he's throwing. But I do think this is a really good fight for Alex Pereira. He's won the fight before. And like you said, Glover Teixeira is in his corner. That's his right-hand man. And Glover Teixeira was beating Jiří Procházka until he wasn't. So I think having more and more knowledge and more data and more hours, or not hours, it hasn't been full hours, but more minutes inside the cage with Jiří Procházka, inside of Team Pereira and Glover, their whole stable, they have a deep understanding for what Jiří Procházka can bring, what he's susceptible to getting hit by, and I think they've devised a good game plan for this. I think you're going to see a more tough, more rugged Jiří Procházka, but Jiří, what got him to the highest level of the UFC, what got him the belt, was his unorthodox style, the people's inability to train for what he was going to bring into the octagon. And if it were anybody else at light heavyweight, I'd probably go with Jiří Procházka to win the fight. But because Alex Pereira is such a fast learner, like you said, he's really making improvements in MMA, even though he's currently the champion, and you would think that he didn't need to make any more improvements in his striking. He's still doing that, and when the fight happens and when it's actually live, he has a really good ability for picking up tendencies and understanding what his opponent's going to throw, maybe what his opponent's landing, and how to avoid that best. But all in all, I think Alex Pereira has the skills and the style to beat Jiří Procházka yet again, retain his title, and still one more time, hopefully we see him go to heavyweight after this, because I think when you've got a guy and you're doing this experiment with somebody who's became the 185 champion, now the 205 champ, but he's totally open to go to heavyweight, let him do that. Like, obviously we got to have some things shake out up there, and you got to defend your belt down here, but he's doing more than enough heavy lifting at light heavyweight to get favors from the UFC, like going to heavyweight. And I think if he goes out and he gets Jiří Procházka out of there while things settle at 205 and we find out who the next #1 contender is, he keeps his eyes on heavyweight.
Yeah, saving 2 cards in 3 months certainly puts you in the discussion for being able to do what you want to do. And if that's what he wants to do, if he's able to defend against Jiří, which I think he will, I certainly wouldn't be mad at it.
Me either.